Greetings, fellow humans. I'm MartianBuu. Last week we talked about the buffs that came with the Caverns of Time set, but there are also quite a few new cards coming with the set, and today we're going to talk about those. Along with the new cards, we also got two complete reworks, so there are two cards in here that are basically new cards. So we're going to go all through them and talk about how they'll impact Wild and Twist. First off, for Druid, we have Rat Sensei. So it's a 2-mana 2/2 beast with Battle Cry and Death Rattle. Add 2 1/1 turtles with Taunt to your hand. What's cute about this is obviously this is a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles reference. The various tokens, their robes are colored like the turtles are. So that's really fun. As a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fan, I'm rooting for this card to be good, and I think it will be. So in Twist, at least, we have the Knight of the Wild payoff, and this really discounts all of that. So you can set yourself up a nice aggro druid list with this and Knight of the Wild. In actual Wild, it's going to be a bit of a tougher sell just because this is kind of a slow card. You know, on the turn that you're playing this or the turn you're trying to play the turtles down, your opponent has created an entire giant board of mechs, so it's not like that's going to really turn the tide, but you get the additional bonus of Frostwolf Matriarch, so you get twice as many payoffs for playing a bunch of cheap beasts. Invigorate, so 2-mana nature spell, choose one, gain an empty mana crystal, or draw a card. So this is unnerved wild growth, but it's got an upside. So if you don't exactly need the mana crystals or you're desperate for something to respond or whatever, you get to draw a card instead, which is a lot like the old wild growth, but it only worked that way at 10 mana. So this one has the additional option to draw the card instead before. Most of the time you're going to take the mana crystal, definitely, but it is nice to be able to search for outs this way. The other thing is Embrace of Nature tutors this now, so you could set your deck up to basically always have this on 2. You just keep Embrace of Nature or Invigorate in your hand, and then you get to skip turn 2 in Wild. I imagine that this is going to be included in just about every Druid deck moving forward, much like Wild Growth was. Certainly Tony Druid, something like Questline Druid is maybe a bit more of a maybe just because you don't really see ramp in that type of deck, period. But if a deck is likely to run Guff or a combo deck like Tony Druid, you're gonna see Invigorate in that list. It's just that good of a card. Then we have Cenarian Hold, 2-mana location. Your next choose one card this turn has both effects combined. This is another really good card. I think it's probably the best of this type of card so far. It's less expensive than Gift of Nature as far as playing it with Nourish, although it doesn't draw a card, and you can just play it out and use it whenever you want to. There is a large variety of choose one cards that are great when you can choose when to get the doubled effect. So having played like Gift of Nature with Nourish and Flipper Friends, it'd be really nice to be able to choose where the effect lands, but it's based on, you know, whichever one you've drawn. Whereas with this, you play it beforehand, and if you're up against aggro and you need to clear the board and protect your face, you can use it on the Flipper Friends, and if you're in a decent spot and you want to get the double value out of Nourish, you can use it on that. This just seems really flexible to me, and I think it's really good with basically every choose one card. It doesn't make you cut down on choose one cards like Gift of Nature would. So I'm comparing it to a card that it's, you know, got a slightly different use case. You know, the Gift of Nature is a tutor effect in addition to being a value effect. But I don't know, I think that this is very good in most type of decks that you would see Invigorate in. So yeah, I expect this to be a really good ramp Druid card moving forward in Wild. So Druid, I think, got a pretty good set. All three of these cards are interesting. Invigorate is probably one of the better cards in the entire set, and while Cenarian Hold is the type of thing we've seen before, I think this is the best version of that we've ever had. So Fandral Staghelm is in shambles once again. Next up we have Hunter. So Trial of the German is 5 mana, summon copies of 2 beasts in your deck that cost 3 or less. It is just now occurring to me that this is copies, not pulling them out, which is interesting. So obviously the idea is to use this with Acid Maw and Dreadscale. And when I've seen people talk about this card, that's mostly what they focus on. But I think that this is not a good tutor for that, because if you've drawn either one of them, this is terrible, right? So like you need to draw this before you've drawn on both Aston Maw and Dreadscale. So you can't just like run them both in a deck and use this as a tutor like you would with Ice Fishing in Shaman. Where this has potential is as a Drekthar call to arms type of effect, where you use this just to have good tempo. You pick some good beasts in your deck and you play this just to be a strong card on curve. I've gone through the twist cards looking for what beasts I would play with that, and I wasn't impressed, to be honest. Like Gorilla Bot looks like one of the better ones, so maybe this is good just because if you play this and you get like a Gorilla Bot and a Dreadscale, that's decent tempo for back then. But I feel like lower curve, more aggressive hunter decks are probably going to be a little bit more interesting than that. As for wild, this is just way too expensive. I feel like at 4 we might have had something to work with here, but at 5, a deck that is built to go to 5 and play this is going to be much better off running Beast Hunter the way that we're used to running it. So I don't think this will see any play in wild. Durnhold Imposter, 3 mana, 3/3. Each turn this is in your hand, transform it into a random 3-cost minion that gains poisonous. There's a cycle of these in this set, and I do think one has some vague potential, but this is not the one. I think this could be a fun card, especially like if it transformed immediately, right? It doesn't. It has to stick around in your hand for a turn. If it entered your hand immediately, I think it could be really fun, because like imagine if you high rolled Death Lord or something like that off of this, and then your opponent just like loses their board to trade into it. But it's very fair. It doesn't have like a tag or anything. I doubt this sees play in Twist, but you never know. Certainly not in Wild. Time Lost Raptor, 2 mana, 1/1 beast with Echo and Battlecry. Adapt your Time Lost Raptors. So because this is a direct to Wild set, we actually have a few cards that have keywords that are later than this time period, but are outdated enough in Standard that they don't want to use it because they don't want to clutter Standard with keywords that aren't too relevant. So we're getting like some throwbacks on some of these cards, and this is one of them. There are a few more in here, and I think it's a really cool space to explore, and definitely something I would have played up a lot for a set like this. But I'm happy that we got a few of them, and this one's pretty cool. So yeah, it's got Echo and Adapt your Time Lost Raptors. So if you manage to play like 3 of these in a turn, it could be pretty interesting. How good is it on curve? If you hit like the plants, it's a Scuffed Haunted Creeper. If you hit the health, it's kind of a 2 mana 1/4. So if you play it just on curve, I think that it's low value. But as soon as you start playing it on like 4 and 6, where you get multiple adapts per raptor, this is actually kind of interesting. I think it has some potential to be played in Twist, much too slow for Wild, but I think it's a really cool design, and I love that they're going back and making use of these ancient keywords for this set. So yeah, Hunter didn't really get anything that I think is going to be too game changing. If any of this sees play, I think it's going to be Time Lost Raptor as far as Twist is concerned, and I don't think any of it's good enough in Wild. That's kind of okay, just because I feel like Hunter got one of the best buff sets. The Dreadscale and specifically Acid Maw buffs I think are huge for Hunter in Wild. So it's not like Hunter misses out on content for Wild, but the actual new cards I think are very fair in that context. Next up we have Mage. So we have Black Morass Imposter. It is a 2 mana 2/2, much like the Hunter one. Transform it into a random 2-cost minion that gains spell damage instead of the poisonous that the Hunter one transformed into. Again, I don't think this one is very good. Maybe if it like, you know, maybe in the context of Twist, it's decent, and maybe you high roll Thalnos and get a +2 spell damage. If you have a spell damage based Mage deck, this could be interesting. But yeah, definitely way too fair for Wild. You run this for the fun of it, not because you're trying to win. Disco at the End of Time, 6 mana, cast 5 random secrets from the past. At the start of your turn, destroy them. So this is very interesting for Secret Mage in Wild. Is it good for Secret Mage in Wild? I am not sure, but it is extremely interesting. So first of all, you play this, and your opponent does one of 2 things. They skip their turn, or you get 2 to 3 secrets worth of value out of this. And that means that your Sage triggers that much harder. Plus, like, 6 mana for trigger 3 secret effects is pretty good. You play this and your Contract Conjurer is instantly free. So if you've been having trouble getting that out at 0 cost, you just play this on curve, and it comes with a 6/6 that your opponent would want to respond to. And if they choose to skip their turn so that you don't get value out of disco at the end of time, then your Contract Conjurer gets a turn of guaranteed attacks. I'm not sure. It could be that this is too expensive for Secret Mage, but I think it's so much secret value that there's at least got to be a build that's worth it. But it'll be interesting to play around with because, you know, like secrets are pretty random. It could be that just there's too many frozen clones going around for this to be any good. But even considering that, I have faith in it. I think, you know, I'll at least build like a Reno Secret Mage with it. Next up, we have Chromy Time Hopper, which I think is one of the cooler new cards we got. So it's a 6-mana 4/4 Mage Legendary, and its battle cry is visit a historical epoch, shuffle the others into your deck. So these are the historical epochs. They're all cast when drawn. So we have get 2 random legendary minions, give your minions +2/+2, get 2 random spells, and deal 2 damage to all enemies. For those of you who played WoW, these are like places that the Bronze Dragonflight would take you to in the Caverns of Time in WoW. So it's a fun reference for those of us who've been playing for a long time. Most of these are good. Battle for Mount Hyjal that gives your minions +2/+2 is going to be very dependent on what you've got going on when you draw it. So that one could fizzle. The other one's giving you like nice value is good. I think, so the way that I think Chromy works is like Symphony of Sins, where you get to like discover one of these. Hopefully you get to pick from all 4, but I assume you get to pick one when you play it. It doesn't just cast one randomly. So if you're head on board, you pick Mount Hyjal, and then if you're behind too much, you can pick Culling of Strathholm, and then somewhere in between you can pick Escape from Durnhold or Opening of the Dark Portal, depending on what you need. In Twist, I think for a slower mage deck, this is actually pretty good. In Wild, I'm completely skeptical. You know, this is just a for fun card, but I do think it's a very for fun card. You know, I'm excited that cards like this have a format like Twist to get to play around with them first before they go to Wild to die. But yeah, it's really sweet. I like Chromy. So I don't know about Mage. I think that the secret card is interesting, at least to try. I think it's got some potential in Wild. The other 2 cards, I think almost certainly not. But if you like Secret Mage, you got something new to play around with. Next up, we have Paladin. So we have Timeless Blessing, 4 mana, give 4 random minions in your hand, +4/+4, +3/+3, +2/+2, and +1/+1 holy spell. So this discounts Garden's Grace in Wild. That is a lot of buffs. So that's what is that, 10 million bonus stats? So yeah, your hand is getting 10/10 for this if you have all 4 minions. The problem is you're skipping a turn to play this, right? So you play this on 4 and your opponent kills you with their mech or discard Warlock board that they've already established the turn prior. But if you play this in a not losing position and then followed up with a huge like Crab Rider or something, you're probably gonna win. So yeah, I think that this is interesting to play around with, but I don't have too much faith in it. It does seem like a ton of stats for Twist though, so we'll have to see how fast that format is. But this could be really, really good and actually have hand buff Paladin be something that it wasn't ever in Standard. Next up, we have Bronze Dragon Knight. So this is a Timeless Blessing target, 4 mana 3/5 dragon. Battle cry, if this has 5 or more attacks, summon a copy of this. So several of the hand buff cards have been improved at this point, so it's going to be a lot easier to buff this than usual. The thing is, you have to play more than one of them to get this to 5 attack, unless the thing you play is Timeless Blessing, and this does not curve well from Timeless Blessing, right? So you play Timeless Blessing on 4, and then Bronze Dragon Knight is taking up your 5, so you have to like coin Timeless into this for it to be an on curve play. That said, if this is a 5/7 and you get 2 of them, that's pretty bonkers, right? So yeah, I think if you can get a couple of hand buffs off, like if you go Smuggler's Run into Grime Street, and then you can play this on 4, you know, you're probably winning that game. Twist wise, you know, yeah, that's definitely speaking from a Twist perspective. In Wild, we have Crab Rider and Charges that are good, and you'd play those instead. Next up, we have Rooney Time Explorer. So 3 mana 3/4 battle cry, discover a location from the future. This is interesting, much like Chromy is. These are all 3 mana 2 durability locations, and it feels to me like they're set in future expansions. I'm not sure when Rooney takes place canonically. If I understand correctly, Rooney is the daughter of Xyrella, for those of you who have been paying attention to the Mercenaries plot. And where she is canonically, I'm not sure, but this all feels like post Wrath of the Lich King expansions, but I couldn't tell you for sure lore-wise. But anyways, so these are locations from the future. They're all 3 mana, 2 durability. So we have choose a friendly minion, summon a copy of it with +3 health and taunt that can't attack. We have draw 2 cards, swap their costs. Your next battle cry this turn triggers twice. Cast 3 random Paladin secrets. Get 2 random dragons with +2/+2. Summon a random 3-cost minion, give it charge. And choose a minion, destroy all minions with less attack than it. I think all of these locations are phenomenal, and you're going to have something you're going to be happy to pick most of the time, I think, in Twist. Even in Wild, I feel like this card is worth playing if it has a deck, you know, like a Reno Paladin would play this for sure, but Reno Paladin has to be good, right? So like you can find a home for this if there's a home to be had, you know, like the rest of the deck needs to come together. But I think that this could be part of a Wild deck with 29 other good cards. So yeah, for Wild, I'm not sure how much effect this is going to have. Rooney looks interesting. The hand buff card is really good if you get it off, but seems kind of slow for modern Wild. I imagine Wild's not going to notice these cards, but I think they're going to be pretty cool and impactful for Twist. Next up, we have Priest, and Priest got a kind of a bonkers set, I think. So first of all, we have, this is like a throwaway reference card. This card is really cool from a like throwback reference standpoint, and like absolutely terrible waste of space for like a function standpoint, I think. So Shadow Word Forbid. So this is like a forbidden card, if you know what I mean. We're not supposed to be able to destroy 4 attack minions. So Shadow Word Forbid, it's got tradable. It's 2 mana shadow spell, much like the other ones. Destroy a 4 attack minion, and then you can corrupt it to destroy all 4 attack minions. Whoa! And you can see the Priest is destroying a Yeti there. For a long time, Priest's biggest weakness, apart from their just inherent weakness as a class, was being able to destroy 4 attack minions because their removal was Shadow Word Pain and Shadow Word Death. So this is just like a really funny reference, you know, as a card. The fact that it has tradable means that maybe this is worth it in Twist, just as like, you know, you can play it to kill a 4 attack minion, and if not, you can toss it back to get something else. But I imagine it's much too one-dimensional to see any play. The corrupt destroy all 4 attack minions is fun, as well as the tradable, just much like the Raptors, and you know, just putting newer keywords on cards that are meant for older stuff, I think is a really fun idea. I wonder if we could have gone corrupt, destroy 4 or less attack or something like that, or if maybe that just like pushes too much into the Shadow Word Pains territory. But anyways, like just conceptually, just for the fun of it, I enjoy this card. I'm glad they printed it just because it tickles me. Now on to some actual good cards. We have Ships. It's a 1 mana 1/2 dragon pirate. After you summon a minion, give it +1 health. And this is wild powerful. Thinking about Shadow Priest in Wild, you play this, your Patches comes out as a 1/2 instead of a 1/1. Your Brigands will come out of hand as 2/3s instead of 2/2s. And your Attendant just comes down as a 1/4. So like if you have this in your opening hand as Shadow Pirate Priest, I feel like you just win the game. Yeah, the board is just so much harder to remove. The Dragon tag, how relevant is that? I'm not sure. I think it's pretty relevant in Twist. I think that Twist has some nice Dragon Priest synergy. So I don't know how many of you guys played Reno Priest back in the day, but like before Anduin came out, it was hot garbage. It was slightly worse Reno Lock into the things that Reno Lock was good into that always lost to Reno Lock because it didn't have any game closers. Like Jiraxxus just soloed it. But now we're getting some stuff like the card we're about to talk about and updated Kathon stuff. So Priest has a lot of more interesting ways to maybe be able to compete with Reno Lock in the late game, and dragons are a big part of that, I think. So having this as like an early card to stave off aggro, you play it with like your Northshire Cleric, you play it with your Clergy, kind of stay ahead on board against aggro early, or have the initiative against other slower decks, and then it'll help activate your dragon synergies. So I think at least in Twist, the dragon portion of this has some relevance. As far as like Wild, this is an aggro card, and it's going to be one of the best cards in the set. I think Warlock got the best card in the set, but this is definitely, you know, alongside Invigorate in the top 5, I think. All right, next up we have Murzon, Thief of Time, 7 mana 6/6 dragon, battlecry. If your deck has no duplicates, discover a dragon, deal damage equal to its cost to all other minions. New Highlander card, very exciting. I do wish we'd gotten a few more, but I'll take the one we got. That's still cool. This is a really good 7-drop The problem for Wild is we already have 2 very good 7-drops. So this is the 3rd best one, I think. We have Behemoth, which is the first by a mile. The Colossal is just like one of the biggest, if not the biggest reason to play Reno Priest in Wild is because of that card. Then Aman'Thul is also very good, both value-wise and for removing big threats. So to add Murozond to an optimized Reno Priest, we have to ask either, is it worth having 3 7-drops, or is this better than Aman'Thul? Because it is not better than Behemoth. Honestly, I think there's a chance it's better than Aman'Thul because dragons tend to be very heavy. It's probably going to clear most boards when you play it, and then it has a 6/6 out. So you get a card, pretty cool. It clears most boards, very cool. But Aman'Thul will remove 2 of anything while also having more exciting things to do following. It's really tough to say without playing it. I would guess that Aman'Thul is the 2nd best and this is the 3rd best. So if we're trying to like make the best possible Reno Priest, is 3 7-drops 1 too many? And I would say probably, unless it's a Renathal version. If you want to build like a Renathal Dragon Priest, this is going to be a really good card in that. But if we're trying to build the most optimized 30 card priest, I don't think that this makes the cut. Still, this is probably the card I'm most excited for. You know, like I really like the Highlander. If you've been following the channel, you know that. And it's really cool to get these throwback type cards. And I'm definitely going to be playing this as much as I can in Highlander priests that I build moving forward. The Diamond card is one of the best looking Diamond cards we've ever got. I'm really excited for this one. Just on the back of Ship's Potato, I feel like Priest got maybe the 2nd best set from the new cards. That 1-drop is so good in Shadow Priest, Shadow Aggro Priest. It's just ridiculous. So huge buff to that deck. Expect to see lots more of it. And there you go. Next up, we have Rogue. So we have Mount Hygel Imposter. This is another one of those transforms into a same cost card, but gains a keyword. This is the only one that I have modest faith in. So at least for Twist, right? Like not for Wild, but for Twist, 4 mana, transform into another 4 mana thing, and that thing gains stealth. You know, stealth is a pretty powerful keyword, and depending on what this transforms into on curve, this could be pretty good. Rogue from this time also really likes stealth cards. So like the Water Rogue played a stealth package for the Sensei to buff. So that could be interesting. I think a Tempo Rogue could consider this in Twist. For Wild, this is much too basic, but for Twist, it's worth experimenting with, I think. Jade Telegram. So 3 mana spell, look at 3 cards in your opponent's hand and shuffle one of them back into their deck. Summons a Jade Golem. I think this card is very cool, mostly because Rogue Jades only ever got 2 cards, where Shaman and Druid each got 3. And so this is the missing 3rd Jade card for Rogue, which is pretty exciting. I like Jades and I like them having some more support. The other 2 Jade cards both got buffed, so Shuriken deals 1 more damage, and Jade Swarmer, I think it's called, is half cost. So, you know, having the extra card might be good. The thing is, I don't know how good this is. 3 mana is a lot to ask for. However, it's not necessarily 3 mana do nothing, right? Like, it summons a Jade Golem. So if you've played Swarmer on 1, and traded that off, then this is making a 2/2 when you play it, and your subsequent Jades are going to be more powerful. You can also discount this with prep if your deck is otherwise good with prep, which if you're running Jade Shuriken, it probably is. So that's pretty interesting. The other thing is, like, I really like the look at your opponent's hand and shuffle one back in type of effect. It's only gone on cards that like aren't cost well enough to really see play. Star Student Stelina just costs 1 too many and could be Battlecry instead of Outcast, and the Rogue one requires you to have secrets out, and Rogue secrets tend to be bad, so building your deck around that is kind of bad. But this is much more flexible, so like you could put Swarmer and Shuriken in a deck and then get the effect out of this, and it's nicer. So I think at least for Twist, this is a decent card for like a Jade Rogue thing. For Wild, I'm much more skeptical, but I do think it's cool. Then we have the Scarab Lord. So Scarab Lord is a 4 mana 3/3 battle cry, summon a 0/2 gong for your opponent, and combo it gains rush. The gong has 2 health, and when it dies it fills your board with 1/1 tokens. So if you coin this, it gets to trade into the gong right away, and it's a 4 mana 3/3 plus 6 1/1s, which is pretty good for the time. You could also coin it out, trade into something spooky, and use like backstab to kill the gong to get the 1/1s. However you want to do it, I guess. I think this is a really interesting card for Twist. I don't really see it in Wild, but in Wild we can play it with like Foxy Fraud and stuff like that, so maybe. I don't know what the rest of that deck would look like. It'd be pretty funny to pull this off with like Quest Rogue and just, you know, get a giant board of 5/5s off of this, but we kind of have to stretch pretty far to imagine this being playable. Rogue, I think, got a really interesting twist set and a pretty whatever Wild set. I do think, surprisingly, the most playable card in Wild is Jade Telegram, just because the other two cards were made so good, and this is probably the best version of this effect, the Shuffle Back In effect. I'd still love to see the effect on a card that is cost appropriately for it without a condition that's too awkward, but, you know, this is pretty close to that. I think, you know, it'll be enough to make me play with it. So yeah, it's pretty fun. And Shaman, another one of the big winners. We have Pebbly Page. It's a 2-mana 2/1 elemental battlecry, draw an overload card. You can't be overloaded this turn. For overload synergy decks in Wild, Backdraft and now Thorim are important elements of that. So you want to get overloads so that you can remove the overload so that you can get the bonus for removing overload. Pebbly Page, I don't think is a good enough effect for you to completely rethink how Overload Shaman works in Wild. Maybe you could tutor overload cards in non-overload centric decks with this. Like, for example, you play this on 5 as Shudderwalk Shaman, it draws your Lightning Storm and you can play it without overloading yourself. That's just an example. I don't think you'd actually do that, but that's like the type of thing that this could do. And like for fun, you could play this as like a better tutor for like Jade Claws and Corrupt the Waters, funny Jade Shaman in Wild as a way to like draw cards that won't make you draw into fatigue with Shudderwalk, but that's, you know, that's just memeing. So yeah, I think that this is a overload tutor in a deck that has 1 or 2 overload cards it really cares about, that would like to find them reliably and skip the overload drawback more than an overload buff to decks like Frog Shaman. Then we have Totally Totems, which is totally one of the best cards in this little set. So 4 mana, summon all 5 basic totems, overload 1. The 5th totem is Wrath of Air Totem, which was the original 4th totem before Strength Totem was added later on. So Strength Totem replaced Wrath of Air Totem. And there's the guy holding up Wrath of Air and Strength Totem and like cherishing them or deciding between them or something. This is like a way to get Wrath of Air Totem in the game now. After Classic got removed, Wrath of Air was gone completely. But more important than all of that, Totally Totems is 4 mana for make 5 totems. This is a huge even shaman buff. So it matters from the standpoint of like getting value out of totemic strength, or maybe your anchored totems sat around for a turn, getting value out of that. I meant totemic might. You know, like that type of thing, you know, like if you have Stone Right either the next turn or the turn before, these are all threats. But more important than that, it is redundancy with Chisel for discounting your big bodies. So Thing from Below and Gigantotem. If you have Chisel early, that's 2 mana for discount each of those by 3. And if you don't, it's a lot harder to get them down fast enough to be impactful. Whereas Totally Totems, as soon as you play this, your Thing from Below and your Gigantotem are free. They are coming down the same turn you play this card. So yeah, I think that this is absolutely insane in Even Shaman. It's like huge redundancy with Chisel for discounting your stuff, and it's a giant board on its own as far as like buffing your totems go. I expect this to solidify Even Shaman as one of the best decks in the game. Finally, we have Alakir, the Winds of Time. So it's a 7 mana hero card, which is really cool. This will be one of 2 hero cards in Twist. We have this and we have Jiraxxus. Battlecry, draw a charge, Divine Shield, Taunt, and Wind Fury minion. The part of this that I think is actually really interesting is the hero power. So with the hero power, your hero gains +2 attack, Divine Shield, and Wind Fury this turn. So that's just really good both defensively and offensively. From then on, your hero power is absolutely nuts, both as removal and as pressure. The big issue with this in Wild, I think, is that the battle cry is pointless. I've looked through a bunch of stuff. I can't figure out how to make this a great finisher while also making the battle cry functional. So the way to build the deck the way I want to, as a way to kind of like close out games, there isn't a package of minions that makes sense for the battle cry. So if this had been a battle cry that was defensive to some degree, I think that this would be an insane Wild card based on that hero power, because the hero power is absolutely nuts. But it's just like too slow and value-y of a battle cry for it to be impactful the turn you play it. And the best I've done to build it has just had 0 cards that interact with the battle cry whatsoever. So yeah, in Wild, I think it's a little unfortunate, but in Twist, I think that this is probably really, really good. You can easily build a deck that can draw at least a couple minions with the battle cry, and then the hero power is going to really carry you moving forward after that. So yeah, I expect this to be a big Twist card. Unfortunate that the battle cry is the way it is for Wild's sake. In the future, if Shaman gets minions with Divine Shield, Taunt, or maybe Wind Fury that can be reduced to 0, I could see this popping up, because you really just need to be able to play the cards the same turn that you draw them for this card to be effective. So I was thinking about, like, could I build this in a way that like Thing from Below could go in the same deck, so that I can just play those out when I play Alakir to defend me until I get to start, you know, really punching face with the hero power. But yeah, not so much. This could be like a really good card in the future. I get the battle cry though, right? It's a reference to original Alakir. Really cool card design wise. Don't think it makes the cut in Wild, but in Twist, I think it's going to be a real powerhouse. So yeah, Shaman totally totems is a huge upgrade to what is already one of the best decks in the game. So from that standpoint, you know, Shaman got a really good set. In Twist, I think Alakir is going to be nuts, and Pebbly Page might be interesting in some decks like Shudderwalk, depending on what kind of overload cards you want to run. Next up, we have Warlock, and Warlock, I think, got the best card in the whole set. We have Chamber of Chumbus. 2 mana for 3 durability. Look at 3 cards in your hand and choose 1 to discard. Draw 2 cards. This is so good. This is like insane in discard Warlock. So first of all, this thing has 3 charges. At 2 charges, I think that this is nuts. But for 2 mana, you get to like look in your hand, discard a Silver Ore Golem, or a 2/5 Taunt, or a Bone Web Egg, or a Soul Barrage, or a Hand of Gul'dan, and then on top of that, you draw 2 cards. So you get targeted discard. You get to like pick your favorite card in hand to discard, and then you draw 2 cards after that. This card is absolutely absurdly bonkers, broken, tier S, phenomenal, game-changing, nerfable, bannable craziness. I think this card is absolutely nuts. It is so good that maybe we're cutting Hand of Gul'dan now, just because the draw on this is so efficient. Like, you get to play 2 of these. Between this and Solarium, you just have so much efficient draw, and getting to cut Hand of Gul'dan is great because it means that Merchant of, it's like, oh, Expired Merchant. Expired Merchant gets to hit Soul Barrage so much more often. So yeah, if you enjoyed like tier 1, tier S Disco Lock, look forward to it being really good again. In Twist, how good is Discard Warlock? Not sure, to be honest. You're missing a lot of the payoff, but like Chamber of Vicious is, Chamber of Scrumbus is so good that I imagine you could at least build something. Witch of the Archthief is a 4 mana 2/4 minion battlecry, summon a 1/3 Voidwalker with Taunt. If your opponent has more minions, repeat. So this is Spreading Plague for Warlock at 2 less mana but 1 less Taunt. This is really good both as like a defensive card on its own right. It also combos very well with Plague of Flames and Wild. Reno Lock, especially now that it's not running Gul'dan anymore, absolutely plays this every time. Super good card. I think that this is a auto include in Reno Warlock moving forward. Reno Warlock, also very good in Twist. We'll definitely run this. Yeah, very good card. Finally, we have Cho'Gall, which is the first of the 2 cards that got completely reworked. So this used to be a 7 mana 7/7 that had the Bloodbloom effect battlecry. So your next spell would cost health instead of mana. This no longer does that at all. This is an 8 mana 8/8 battlecry. Return all cards you discarded this game to your hand. They cost health instead of mana. In Twist, this might be a tempo discard payoff. In Wild, it is not. In Wild, we really want to be hitting Soul Barrage with Expired Merchant. And if you hit this with Expired Merchant, you're a big sad, because it's a tempo aggro-y zoo deck. It's not like trying to go that late in the game. You want to kill your opponent before you could ever play this. So yeah, it definitely ruins your Expired Merchant synergies to play it in tempo discard Warlock in Wild. However, this is a very interesting combo card. So you think about the location, you can pick things to discard with it. So if you manage to discard like a Bran and a core set Alexstrasza, you know, you have burst with that for free that costs health instead of mana. So you can play those. You can play with Astalor, just deal a bunch of burst damage by playing Cho'Gall and getting all that for free. You can even get only some of them for free, play the Cho'Gall and just not play the rest of it that turn. You can also discard your Reno Jackson and play Cho'Gall, get to Reno up the same turn. You could discard like your Sargeras and your Reno with Cho'Gall, then play Cho'Gall on 8, getting your Reno and your Sargeras, so you get to play your Sargeras to get the taunts, and then play the Reno to heal up after you've spent all of your health playing that stuff. And if you play Expired Merchant to hit Cho'Gall, Cho'Gall will now give Cho'Gall. So if you play Cho'Gall, you will get a Cho'Gall, and if you discarded Reno, you'll get a Cho'Gall and a Reno, and then you can just have infinite value and healing that way. So this is a very interesting combo card. It is not a tempo discard Warlock card, but it does have a lot of potential in Wild. So yeah, Warlock got like the best set of all of these classes by far for both formats. Reno is one of the best decks in the Twist format. If we like rewind time to that time period, Reno was very good back then. There's so much potential to improve that list for Twist. For Wild, we've recently seen with Sargeras, Reno come back and be a pretty good deck. Witch of the Archthief definitely improves that deck from there. And then Chamber and Cho'Gall kind of give you some interesting things to work with. I think Chamber of it, the location. I think the location has potential to just be like, you play it in literally every deck. If you're playing Reno, your hand will have cards that you're fine discarding. So just like for 2 mana, you get to draw stuff, even like Even Lock, right? So you play this on 2 in Even Lock, you activate it, you go even, and then every time you activate it after that, you go positive. So it helps keep your hand active. Cho'Gall is an even card, so maybe you could play those two together to do something interesting. They're just like nutty cards. There's going to be so much to play with in both formats with these cards. Warlock just, it did really well. Next up, we have Warrior, and Warrior has some really cute things. So we have Ivory Rook, which is a reference to Ivory Knight, which is a Paladin card. 4 mana, 4/4, Battlecry, discover a taunt minion, gain armor equal to its cost. So the Ivory Knight, you discover a Paladin spell and heal equal to its cost. Ivory Rook gives you armor, which is better, and discovers a taunt minion, which is better, at least in Twist. So yeah, this could potentially be really interesting in the Twist format. Warrior definitely wants more armor and values having taunts, and the discover pool is more shallow, so you're going to get a card you like more consistently. Wild discover is all over the place, so I think what we have to do with Ivory Rook as far as like, is this playable in Even Warrior, is we have to calculate what the average taunt cost is and think, what amount of armor do you have to gain from Ivory Rook on average, where 4 mana 4/4 gain armor is valuable. If that ends up being like 6+ armor, then maybe, but I think it's probably lower than that. Really fun reference. I think that this might actually have some real potential in Twist, but for Wild, it's a throwaway card. Then we have Blast from the Past, which is like the cutest reference card in the whole set. There's just a few in here that they don't really have much hope in Wild or even Twist, but they're just such fun throwbacks that they're worth it. So how good is this? I don't know. So 3 mana, Blast from the Past, you see Dr. Boom there with his bombs. Get 2 spare parts, summon 2 1/1 boom bots, shuffle a bomb into your opponent's deck. So this is another bomb card, which I think for straight to Wild sets, it's really cool to go back and enhance these mechanics that have no hope of getting anything else because their archetype isn't in Standard anymore. So things like Soul Demon Hunter, and they're never making another Soul card for Standard, probably. So it's cool when we go back to like add things like that, and bombs are one of those. So Wild is getting another bomb card to go with its bomb cards that have rotated. The problem is I don't think that this is enough. It's like 1 bomb for 3, very modest tempo and very modest value. So like, is this going to resurrect Bomb Warrior? Almost certainly not, but I'm sure I'll build the deck for a video. Getting the 2 spare parts is kind of cool. You get 2 of them, so it's more likely that one will be relevant. But while spare parts I think are one of the coolest ways that they've done discover value in the past, they are very outdated as far as impact. So you're getting 2 pretty like, half a mana worth of effect effects for this. But anyways, you do get the 2/1/1 boom bots that have some tempo, and you shuffle a bomb in. So it's definitely good enough. And I would say it's probably one of the better bomb cards. You know, Wrench Caliber is still the best one, but like, you know, that's better than the 3/3, I think. You know, the 2/1/1s and getting some spare parts to mess with later. As far as Twist goes, I don't think the bomb is that relevant because it's the only bomb effect in Twist. You have the Iron Juggernaut, but like they don't have any synergy other than you're putting in damage that might happen. So yeah, I think this is a really cool card. It could see play. It's like vaguely playable enough in Twist, but you know, for Wild, I think it's much more cute than worth considering. Next up, we have Hobart Grapplehammer, which is the second of the 2 cards that was completely reworked. So it used to be 2 mana, 2/2, all weapons in your hand and deck get +1 attack. This is now twice as much mana, but the battle cry is if you have a weapon equipped, you have all minions in your hand and deck +2/+2. And in Twist, at least, I think that this is very good. So you play your Fire Your War Axe on 2, or you coin your Death's Bite on 4, and then you follow that up with Hobart, and it buffs everything in your hand and deck. So yeah, I think that this is going to be pretty good on curve, as long as you have a weapon. That does matter for Cthulhu, so all of your Cthulhu stuff gets improved if you haven't played it yet, but specifically Cthulhu itself will get the +2/+2, and the stock will get +2/+2 twice because you're giving it to the Cthulhu and also to the stock. So yeah, cool card for Twist. Is it anything in Wild? Probably not. No, I don't think so. I mean, we've already played with it a little bit. It doesn't look very good. So yeah, Warrior got an interesting set. I think it got a funny set. I don't know how good those cards are going to end up being, but at least in Twist, I think a couple of them might be impactful. And while, you know, we're not really going to notice those beyond like it's going to be fun to play some Bomb Warrior again with an additional bomb card. And finally, we have the neutrals. So we're starting off with Shark Puncher. 2 mana, 2/2 pirate, Death Rattle, give a random friendly pirate +2/+2. I don't know what to think of this card, to be honest. If it was a battle cry, you know, obviously you'd see a ton of play, but the fact that it's a Death Rattle means your opponent can clear the other pirates first and then clear this. I don't know what pirate deck would even play it. Maybe Shadow Priest has few enough good pirates that it would consider this one, but it's also getting another good pirate, and it really values the 1-cost pirate. So I'm not sure Pirate Priest would play this. I think the deck that really would have played this is Questline Warrior. You know, like if that was still a thing. It really values cheap pirates, and as far as cheap pirates go, you know, after the 1-cost ones, the 2s aren't that great. So this could maybe help with that, but the quest line would need to be reverted a little bit. I do think 2 mana for 4/4 is pretty good, so there's a chance this sees playing something, but if I was gonna bet on it, I would say no. I think the flavor of the card is incredible. You know, Shark Puncher is so funny. I'm rooting for it. I want it to be good, but yeah, I don't have a lot of faith. Timeline Accelerator is a 3 mana 2/2 mech, battle cry, draw a mech, and it costs 2 less. I don't know, honestly. The effect is really strong. The mana cost is 3. So I don't know, talking through it, maybe it's just too good. I don't know. This is probably really good, isn't it? So you play it for like 2 or 1 mana, depending on how many mech warpers and galvanizers you've played already. And then it gives you another mech that comes with a discount. So especially if it hits like Shark or Gaia or Leviathan or whatever that Wind Fury Dragon is, it ends up being really good. Yeah, this is probably great, right? Like 3 mana 2/2, draw a mech, you get 2 less. All right. Okay, I didn't have a lot of faith in it at first, but like sitting here staring at it, talking about it, it's probably going to be one of the core mechs moving forward. Future Emissary, 4 mana 4/4 dragon, battle cry, reduce the cost of all dragons in your hand by 1, give them +1/+1. In Twist, I think this is going to be pretty good. The discount is going to be nice, the buff is going to be nice, playing a dragon on 4 may be nice. The thing is, I feel like Worgen Greaser is going to make it so that 4-cost things tend to die without doing much. So your opponent plays Worgen Greaser, you play this, and they get to trade into it, and the Worgen Greaser gets to live. Even Piloted Shredder would trade into this pretty efficiently. So all I'm saying with this is like 4 mana plays have a lot of competition now, and even with like the True Silver Champion and Piloted Shredder of the past, we have like 6 attack on things now with high health. So it's going to be interesting to see how that section of the game is affected by the existence of Worgen Greaser. It could be that this is just way too low impact to play around that time, but your follow-up plays are pretty good because your stuff is cheaper and stronger. So this might make the cut, especially because like it brings Morazon down to 6 mana. You know, you play this on 4 and then coin the Morazon next turn, and that takes care of like Greaser and whatever your opponent played afterwards because they got to trade Greaser into this for free. So yeah, real hard to say. I think that this could be interesting. In Wild, I don't see it, but then we have Menagerie Mug and Menagerie Jug. So these cards were made for Battlegrounds, so they didn't have to have the ones that came in Karazhan. These are also cost the same as the ones in Karazhan, so like how interesting are they? I would say not very. If they've been cost a little bit more modern, maybe, but think about like Party Animal, right? So like Party Animal is a 2 mana 2/3 beast that buffs Menagerie stuff in your hand, and Menagerie Mug hits the things that can attack already on board, but like you have to have a board, and it comes down a turn later, and it has less stats on its own, and it can only hit 3 things. So like these are pretty throwaway cards in my opinion. I guess it's cute that they're here, but they might as well not be. Next up we have Ice Stalk of Kathon, one of the cooler new cards I think. So 4 mana 1/1, taunt and lifesteal. Whenever your Kathon gains attack or health, this does too, wherever it is. Very cool for Twist. So all of your Kathon buffers are going to buff this as well. So you can go like the 2 mana 2/3 on 2. You can play the 3 mana 2/2 that deals 2 damage on 3, and then you play this and it's a 5/5. 4 mana 5/5 taunt lifesteal. Gotta be real good in Twist. And if you play it later on, once you've buffed things a few other ways, you know, this thing's gonna be a chonker. It's gonna be a big threat. In Wild, I don't know. In Wild, when we saw this added to the set, I was expecting maybe a few more new Kathon themed cards, but we didn't. This is the only one. This is the only new one. We got a bunch of Kathon buffs, but the buffs were pretty conservative. So I expect Kathon to be a big player in Twist, and I expect it not to move the needle by enough in Wild as far as having a meta Kathon deck, but it's definitely moved Wild Kathon stuff. This, in combination with the buff, has moved Wild Kathon stuff from absolutely unplayable to the point where I can't really even have fun with it to like, I'm going to circle back to this for content from time to time, just because I really like Kathon, and I think it's playable enough in combination with like Buckler Shield Shatter that like I could have some fun with a Kathon deck now, instead of it just being like a way to gain 1,000 ranks in a stream or two. So anyways, I love this card. I love the Kathon buffs. Probably my favorite part of the set. Then we have Infinite Amalgam, 4 mana 2/4, all minion types. Inspire, Frenzy, Spellburst, Honorable Kill, and Overkill. Summon a 1-cost minion. So how good is this in Twist? On 4, you play it and your opponent trades into it with Working Greaser or Piloted Shredder, and you're sad. But if you have initiative or your opponent didn't play a Working Greaser or Piloted Shredder, that's a lot of 1-cost minions potentially to get. So you can Hero Power and get 1. If you trade and it survives, you get 1. If you play a spell, you get 1. And either way you kill an opponent with this, you get 1. It's really funny. Like, this might as well just say when this kills a minion, but it has Honorable Kill and Overkill. So yeah, what a cute throwback card to all the various keywords from time gone by. I love that they did this for a few cards. I wish that it was played up a lot. You know, I'd love to see all these keywords all over these cards. But yeah, this is really cute. Mild potential in Twist, I think. This had to have Rush for Wild, I would say. But for Twist, I think this might work itself into some places. Next up, we have Sora Dormi, 5 mana 8/8 dragon, dormant for 2 turns. When this awakens, reduce the cost of all dragons in your hand by 4. Don't know. Especially with Emperor Thorson costing 5 now, it's really hard for me to judge this, because like reducing the cost of all dragons in your hand by 4 seems really strong for Twist. But, you know, playing something that costs 5 to do literally nothing for 2 turns has a really high potential to set you back in Twist. And like, you'd think because this is an older format, you could maybe get away with that sort of thing. But in addition to the power of cards being lower, the healing available was much lower. You know, like Reno was the healing card back then. People were playing anti Healbot in slower decks because they were desperate, you know, and like Refreshment Vendor. So the healing effects were few and far between and low impact. So recovery after skipping a turn is pretty sketchy. So yeah, the effect is strong enough that I could see it being playable, but the tempo loss, I don't know. As far as wild goes, you're playing this for fun. I think like 5 mana go dormant for 2 turns. That's not happening. Okay, so next we have Volstan Staghelm. 6 mana, 3/6, Death Rattle, summon a taunt minion from your deck. This does not itself have taunt, which I think really just ruins it. And actually, now that I think about it, for twist, you know, Void Lord, Enhanced Dreadlord don't exist yet. Your big taunt minion is like Sludge Belcher. And like you have to run Sludge Belcher in a deck that would want to run Volstan. So it's not like you can just play this in a Druid deck and hoping to pull the 8 mana 8/8 taunt out. I hope they're willing to do buffs to these cards during its time in twist, because it'd be really cool to see this at a mana or 2 lower or have taunt itself. And it would go with like N'Zoth strategies and stuff like that. At 6 mana, with no immediate board impact, 3/6 is not doing it for wild, of course, but I feel like this might be a little too conservative even for twist. But yeah, it could be really cool with N'Zoth. So that was all the new and completely reworked cards for Caverns of Time. I do think that several of these are going to have huge impact on wild. Much like the buffs itself, I think that they're mostly going to have twist impact, but there's like a small percentage of these that are just like huge in wild. So like the Warlock location, Totally Totems, Invigorate, you know, those cards are going to have an enormous impact on wild. A lot of these have some other cool like wild stuff too. Like I said, Kathon is going to be fun. It's gone from tier completely unplayable, you can't even, you know, just have a silly time with it, to tier it's bad, you're not going to win most of your games, but you're going to have fun losing them type of, you know, it's gone from like forget these cards ever existed to you can meme around with them a little bit and have a good time, which I think is like a great goal to have for wild buffs. So like the Kathon, I think for me personally is a success, even if I would have liked them to push a little bit more with it. But Kathon gonna be really cool for twist. This whole set's just gonna be really cool for twist. I hope you will all play it, because I think the format's gonna be really fun, and I would like to see it return. I'd like them to see them do more things like this in the future. I'm just brimming with excitement for twist, so that's where I'm at. Cool set, cool throwbacks. Looking forward to them doing this again. Let me know in the comments what you think of the new cards, what you're excited to play for twist. Like and subscribe to support the channel, and thank you so much for watching.